Well, thank you everyone for being here. My name is Janet Williams, and I'm going to be the moderator today. And I'm really excited to be here for a lot of reasons. The subject matter, but more importantly, that I get to hear Lenny again. So Lenny is a social worker and has served individuals living with brain injury for over 40 years. With through clinical treatment, program development, advocacy, and research. She served as a brain injury education counselor at Craig Hospital, providing community advocacy and education, group treatment, and program development. And she led the Living Well Brain Injury Program, which we're going to hear more about today. She was principal investigator on Craig's TBI model system, funded randomized control investigation called SAIL, which stands for the Self-Advocacy for Independent Living Intervention. Lenny and I have probably known each other for 40 years, and I always learn so much and always enjoy every minute with Lenny. So I know you will too. We wanted to start off today and just find out who's on here. Since we don't have a huge crowd, but we have an important crowd, we wanted to just have each of you tell us who you are, where you're from, and what appealed to you about this topic. What is it that appealed to you about attending today? So if anybody would like to unmute themselves and turn your camera on, and we promise we'll let you be muted and your camera off after that, if you choose.
I'm a physical therapist in the school system in Oregon.
Okay.
And hello, and I have actually done rehab in the hospital, pediatric rehab in the hospitals as well, but I try to be a bridge for our students in Oregon. And because of my experiences with a lot of students, well, not a lot, several students with traumatic brain injuries, and I am K-21, so I wanted to just get as much information as possible, and I thought this was a very interesting, and I was very excited for it.
Great to have you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Hi,
John?
go
ahead, Karen.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Karen. I'm a behavioral therapist for a community-based brain injury organization. And the topic was quite appealing because I'm constantly trying to support my clients to live well, meaningful, fulfilling lives. So I was kind of hoping to get some more tips and advice, some tricks and tips, and pass on the knowledge that I've learned today. Thank you.
Great. And where do you work? What state? I mean,
I'm actually in London, Ontario, Canada.
Nice. Okay. Welcome. John or Lisa?
Hi, John Richards, clinical social worker in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And a colleague of mine and I have been doing a series of presentations on brain injury and self-advocacy in New Hampshire and Maine. So I'm curious to learn from Lenny how she approaches all this.
Right on. That sounds great. I'm from Massachusetts originally, so we were neighbors.
John, I think you've emailed me before, is that right?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, right.
I've been around the brain injury community for a long time.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Lisa Kurtz from Fort Collins, Colorado. And hi, Lenny. Haven't seen you in years.
Hi.
Great to see you again. I'm a certified brain injury specialist, as Lenny knows, and do tons of forensic work with personal injury cases. So I'm always hungry to hear more about how to help those needy folks manage their lives. And thanks for doing this presentation.
Sure. Wonderful. I think we got everybody. Did we miss anybody?
Hello?
Oh, sorry. Nichols.
Nichols, it's Catherine Nichols. I'm
Catherine.
Sorry, I'm weak on technology. I'm a mother of a brain injury survivor. I live in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
Her son went to Craig, and I think I might have met you, Lenny, then.
I think so.
But I'm very involved in advocacy at our state level, so I just am a sponge to learn whatever I can.
Wonderful.
Great.
Welcome.
Mhm.
Hi.
Hi.
I guess I'll go next. My name's Tyler. I'm a program coordinator and supervisor of a acquired brain injury program with Phoenix, out of Regina, Saskatchewan.
Okay.
And I just wanted to take this because it's always good to expand your knowledge, see, I guess, other opinions and something that I can maybe pass on to our residents and clients. So,
Great.
yeah.
Fabulous.
Okay. Is that everyone? Okay, I'm going to get started, and then at the end, we'll have a little time for questions and answers and discussion. I'm so thankful to have Janet here. Janet is, to me, kind of the epitome of advocacy in brain injury, advocating and empowering people to really live their best life as independently as possible. And I'm excited to have her input in our discussion at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Couple things I'd like to cover today. I'd like to define self-advocacy, and I see it as an important element of living well. I'd like to describe the SAIL program, an evidence-based program that's aimed at enhancing self-advocacy. I'll review a little bit of the research that we did at Craig Hospital here in Colorado, and then discuss our role as professionals, those of us who are working in this field, in empowering people to live well after brain injury. So I think when we think about trying to help someone else live well, we have to kind of take a look at ourselves and kind of assess, what does it take in our own lives to live well? What does it mean to live well? When I ask that question, and I often do, of people living with brain injury and families, I guess what I'm saying is I often ask that question, and the answers that I get kind of go along with what you see in the literature. I think there are 4 key areas: health and wellness in all aspects of a person's life, having social connection, having a sense that you belong somewhere, that people get you, that people understand you, having a sense of purpose and meaning in life, and having some self-determination, the ability to control or manage your own life. Can you imagine, even if you had all these other things, health and wellness, some purpose and meaning, a sense of social connection, a place you belong, if you didn't have the ability to determine the path of your own life and to advocate for your own needs and your wishes? Self-determination has been defined as experiencing a quality of life that goes along with what you prefer, goes along with how you see your strengths and also your needs. Self-advocacy has been defined as being an important component of self-determination. And what it means is recognizing and communicating your needs and wishes, and then making informed decisions to fulfill those needs and wishes. And I think that every word that's in that definition is really important. Recognizing or being aware of, being able to communicate not only your needs, but also your preferences and wishes. And then making decisions that are based on information that you've been able to gather. The term self-advocacy is closely related to self-management, managing a chronic condition in your life, and also the term empowerment, assisting someone else in getting control over their life and enhancing their ability to advocate for themselves and for their family. Advocacy comes in many forms. There's systems advocacy, being able to advocate for changes in policy or laws or rules for a specific cause like climate change or gun control. There's also peer advocacy, advocating together with other people that face similar needs that you do. For example, if you're someone living with a brain injury, gathering together with other people, go talk to your congressman or be involved in changing legislation. And then there's self-advocacy, and that requires a complex set of personal skills. It requires self-assessment, being able to really take a look at yourself, self-efficacy, the belief that you can do it, good communication skills, problem solving, decision-making, and being able to regulate your emotions. I'm going to take a second here and reduce a few things on my screen. There we go. Okay, see a little better. We all need to advocate for ourselves at different points in our life, right? When you're helping your kid get into college, or you're trying to get a new job, or dealing with a conflict with a neighbor. But the need to advocate for yourself really increases when you're faced with unique challenges, when you need things that not everybody else needs, and you need resources that may not be readily available. Much of the literature about self-advocacy has been about people living with developmental disabilities or chronic health conditions like cancer or mental health issues. And some of the findings of those studies are that self-advocacy interventions should address self-awareness, knowledge of resources, and being able to communicate what you need. The brain injury literature on self-advocacy is sparse, and it's mostly been focused on family advocacy, family members advocating for the person who has the brain injury, for themselves and their own needs as a family member, their need for respite, their need for emotional support, and the needs of their family as a whole, their economic needs, their health needs. David Mann did some of the early work on self-advocacy. He looked at family empowerment and did several studies looking at family empowerment interventions. Glang and McLaughlin did some studies looking at parental advocacy, training family members, parents, to advocate for their children with brain injury. And Alan Brown and his colleagues did a randomized controlled trial where they looked at people living with brain injury and their families working together to advocate for themselves, and also to advocate for their peers, for the greater good of people living with brain injury. They didn't see a significant difference between the treatment group and the control group in their study, but they did find something very important. They concluded that bringing like-minded people together, people who have similar needs, to address advocacy, is a really important ingredient. Self-advocacy after brain injury is challenging. The very skills that are required for self-advocacy, the ones we just spoke of, are often the same skills that are affected by the injury. Being able to take a look at yourself, to be self-aware, to assess your own needs, being able to communicate and problem solve and regulate your emotions. And brain injury presents a complex and really sudden change in a person's life. The needs are unique, they're hard to see, and many go unmet. So why should we even talk about self-advocacy for the person who's living with the brain injury? After all, other people provide advocacy for the person. We all do. Social workers, physicians, family members. And in some cases, if a person has difficulty, for example, communicating, or they have a very low level of consciousness, they may not be able to be very involved in their own advocacy efforts. Someone else may need to take that lead role. And often family members and the person with the brain injury are working together as a team. But I say to you that the process of advocating for oneself, for the person with the injury advocating for themselves, has value in itself. It goes back to that self-determination, steering the course of your own life. Having choice, autonomy can give you purpose and self-determination. And it also can increase your sense of self-efficacy, your belief that you can be successful, and your satisfaction with life. I like to use this picture to kind of describe that there are different ways to direct your life. Advocating for yourself doesn't mean not letting other people be involved. It's something that you don't have to do alone. And in fact, asking for help is an important part of self-advocacy. When you look at this boat, there's 4 guys on this boat. The guy in the front has his hands on the ropes. He kind of looks like he's in charge, but we really don't know whose boat this is. It could belong to the guy in the orange jacket with the hat on. Maybe it's his boat, but he doesn't quite have the skills to work the ropes. So he's got other people with him. But he's still the person who can say, I want to go this direction. I want to go left up here. Directing your own life, and you don't have to do it alone. Self-advocacy for independent life is a program, or SAIL is a program that is aimed to empower people and their families with the beliefs and the knowledge and the skills of self-advocacy and living well. Way back in 1992, the Rocky Mountain Regional Brain Injury System gave a grant to the Brain Injury Association of Colorado, which is now called the Brain Injury Alliance of Colorado, to develop a advocacy training program for family members. And they hired me to develop that program. I pulled together an advisory committee of people with lived experience, people from different resources, different kinds of professionals. And we determined that we really need to focus the program for both people living with brain injury and family members. We developed a workbook, a gigantic workbook that had a number of chapters, and the first several chapters were written by people living with brain injury and family members, talking about their own journey of advocacy. And the reason we did that is we felt that there was an important component of letting people know, hey, you're not alone. You're not the only person that's been down this path. Someone else has been down it, and here's the map that they made for it. You don't have to start from scratch. And just that feeling that you're not the only person dealing with these problems. There are other people who get you, who understand. And then I wrote a basic chapter about self-advocacy. What are some of the basic skills and beliefs and needs of someone who wants to advocate for themselves? And then we had various people in the community write about different resources and how to access those resources. That workbook has been updated a few times, but it's still pretty out of date. It's on the BIAC website, which I listed here. Then we developed a series of workshops based on that workbook. We'd go around the state of Colorado. We'd bring people together, people living with brain injury, family members, professionals working with them, and resource providers in the community. And our goal was really twofold. It wasn't just so the people with lived experience could learn about the resources, but also so the resources could learn what's it like to have a brain injury. What do these people really need? What are they wanting? And we hoped that both sides would learn from that experience. We were able to hire a couple of peer coaches, 2 women who had experienced a brain injury, who provided coaching for other people, not doing it for them, but teaching them, hey, here's some ways that you can advocate for yourself. We had very positive feedback, and several years later in my private practice, I developed more of a small group intervention and a separate workbook to really focus in a little more intensely over a series of sessions with people working together in a small group. The groups that were really focused on people who were living with brain injury, but were also applicable for families. And then we did some research at Craig Hospital on those groups. A little bit about that group model. There are a few key ingredients that I think kind of go into the mix of what makes SAIL work. And the first is a focus on self-awareness, helping people to think about, who am I? Who am I now after this injury? How do I assess my needs? How do I assess my strengths, which are just as important? And how do I use that information to then set goals that are realistic and measurable, but also work toward a longer term purposeful goal? There's also a focus on developing self-efficacy, that belief that I can do this. I have the ability to do this. Developing skills and taking care of yourself, organization and communication, learning about brain injury, learning about resources. And then another, I think, magic ingredient in the mix is the group process. Instead of me telling people what it's like to advocate for yourself after a brain injury, which I haven't experienced a brain injury, Having people work together in a small group, getting that sense of universality that they're not alone, learning from each other's experiences, feeling good about being able to help each other, and developing a sense of cohesion and belonging. There are 4 cornerstones to the curriculum of the SAIL program that I think are just really the core of what makes up SAIL. The first is taking care of yourself and doing that in all areas of wellness, and realizing that taking care of yourself is not a luxury. It's part of the job of being a good self-advocate, whether you're the person with the brain injury or a family member. Sometimes I think that's particularly difficult for family members to remember, that it's not a luxury to take care of yourself. It helps you be a great advocate. And I like to use the wellness wheel as a tool to help people continuously evaluate where they're at in their wellness. The wellness wheel is a concept that was developed by a physician named Bill Hetler back in the 70s. And you've probably seen different iterations of it. Sometimes it has more pieces to it than this, but I like this kind of simple focus on 5 different areas of wellness. People can use the wheel to just continually think about, okay, how am I doing? Am I doing things for my physical well-being? Am I eating right? Am I getting some exercise? What about my cognitive health? Maybe I could join a book club, or I could be reading the newspaper every day. And what about your social well-being? That's an area that when we talk about it in groups, people often roll their eyes like, oh yeah, that's the area I may not be taking care of. Are you talking to a friend every week? Are you joining a class or a group where you can be involved with other people? And what about your spiritual well-being? It gives you a sense of purpose and the things that really fill your spirit. For some people, those are religious, and for other people, it may be things like volunteering. Volunteering is one of those activities that I think of as a super activity. It really affects all of these 5 areas of the wheel. And then your emotional well-being. How are you doing emotionally? The second cornerstone of SAIL is to gather information, to realize that knowledge gives you power. Knowledge gives you power. Learning about your injury, learning all the verbiage of brain injury rehabilitation, learning about your own self and your needs, and learning about resources in the community, what's out there, what's available. The third cornerstone is to be organized and be prepared, to find an organization system that works for you as an individual rather than works for your speech pathologist or your mother. But I've met so many people who have organization systems, maybe like a great day planner, but they just don't use it. It's not really functional for them. They need something that they will actually go to and be able to pull up and find when they need it. And organizing a self-advocacy team, pulling a group of people around you that will help you in your advocacy efforts. Being prepared before meetings, talking about strategies for how you can do that. And not only for meetings, but also for phone calls. And then documenting what's occurred in a meeting, either by keeping a notebook and a call log of information that you get from phone calls and meetings, or by following up with an email after a meeting so that you've got documentation where they know what you got out of this meeting and what your plans are for the future. And the fourth cornerstone, it can be a hard one and takes a lot of the focus of the SAIL group, is assertively communicating and negotiating your wishes and needs. I think most of us could work on our assertive communication skills. I know I could. It's easy sometimes to fall into being passive in different situations or being aggressive when our needs are great and we're not getting them met. And of course, that happens a lot after brain injury. But being assertive can allow people to want to help you more and want to follow through and help you get the resources that you need. Another part of those communication skills is to develop active listening skills and realizing that being a good listener, being able to really actively listen to other people is one of the best ways to get them to listen to you. When I talk with groups about assertive communication, it is something that takes a lot of practice. And often I'll recommend to people that they keep going with that practice after the group, taking classes in the community or finding workbooks on assertive communication, practicing with their family. There are a couple of ways that I help explain to people what it means to be assertive. And I think the easiest and most straightforward is attacking the problem, not the person. When you're being assertive, you're attacking the problem, not the person. As opposed to being aggressive when you may be attacking the other person to try to get to the problem. Starting your sentences with the word I would like this, I prefer this, I feel this, rather than you. Sticking to the facts, staying goal-directed, saying what you want. I'd like to do this myself. I prefer to do this myself. Instead of what you don't want. Stop telling me what to do. Saying what you feel, I feel frustrated, rather than showing it. Taking the time that you need. I find that a lot of people who are living with brain injury will say to me, they feel the need to hurry. If they're in a conversation or a negotiation with someone, they don't always feel that they can take the time that they need to process because the other person is maybe processing more quickly than they are. And realizing that it's totally okay to say, you know what, I need to think about this for a while. I'll get back to you. Listening, really listening to the other person. And realizing that the way you present yourself, your gestures, your expressions, your tone of voice count. You can be using very assertive words, but if your gestures or your tone of voice is aggressive or passive, it may not come across as you intended. And to stay focused on your goal, getting your needs met. I'd like to tell you a little bit about some of the research that we've done on the SAIL program. And we did this research at Craig Hospital in the Denver area. The first was a validation of 2 personal self-advocacy measures. We realized that we needed a way to measure self-advocacy if we were going to research it. Then we did a randomized feasibility study to see, was it feasible to really take a look at those? We then got a 5-year grant, a TBI Model Systems grant from NIDLR to do a randomized controlled trial. All 3 of these studies focused on individuals with the injury rather than the family advocate. But I do believe, and SAIL is developed to meet the needs of families as well. So for our measure development study, we developed 2 measures. One was called the SAS, the Self-Advocacy Scale. It's an 8-item domain-specific self-efficacy scale. So it looks at people's beliefs about their ability to advocate for themselves. The second is called the Personal Advocacy Activity Scale, and it's a self-rating of self-advocacy behaviors. And it's modeled after another scale that was developed by Jim Malik and his colleagues that looked a little bit more at peer advocacy. Both of these measures were found to be reliable and valid. We did a panel review where we sent the measures in a longer form out to experts really in several countries and pulled that information in. Then we did a survey with the measures where we asked people with lived experience and family members to respond to the survey. And then our biostatistician, Chris Pretz, did a Roche analysis of those results. We found that the measures were reliable, they were correlated to each other, they fit well together, and they also fit with other similar measures. This is just an example of the self-advocacy scale and a couple of the items on it. All of the items were developed to fit within the 4 cornerstones of SAIL. So for example, I can control my emotions when I'm talking to people about my needs. or I can keep track of important information that I need. Then they rated those items from 1, not confident, to 4, very confident. Then we did the feasibility study. We had 12 people who were living in the community. They were all between 1 and 23 years post-injury. They were randomized to either a treatment group. They got the SAIL workbook and went through the group, the treatment group, and then a control group that just was given the workbook and was asked to study it on their own time. And both groups received both the original SAIL workbook that's on the BIAC website and then the treatment intervention SAIL workbook. We found that that SAIL was feasible for further study. The results were trending in the right direction. When you have 12 people, you can't really analyze the results. But we felt that there was feasibility for further research, and that people could develop self-advocacy beliefs even 23 years post-injury. They also could set self-advocacy goals for themselves and meet those goals. And we found that the measures we developed were useful. So then we got this larger grant to look at the SAIL program through a randomized controlled trial. And these were the people that were involved in this grant. The first 3 lines are folks that all worked at Craig Hospital. Our consumer advisor, Rich Owens, is someone who was probably about 20 years post-injury at the time of the study. And Graham Simpson is in Australia and has done a lot of related psychosocial work in brain injury. This was a longitudinal 2-arm randomized controlled trial, and our hypothesis was that people who went through the SAIL intervention would demonstrate significantly greater improvements in their self-advocacy beliefs, their belief that they could advocate for themselves, from baseline before the group to post-treatment. We had 67 people who met the inclusion criteria, and we looked at several measures. We used the SAS, we used the satisfaction with life scale. We used a scale called the general self-efficacy scale that looks at a person's general feelings that they can be successful in approaching problems in their life. We used the PASS, the flourishing scale that looks at a person's perception of how successful they are in their life, and the part O that looks at participation. And we took measurements at baseline, at post-treatment, and then again 6 weeks after treatment and 12 weeks after treatment. We randomized people into 5 different waves. So, and I was the group leader in all of these waves. So we did them all at separate times. And we did them across the state of Colorado so that some of these groups were in more rural areas and some more urban. We included people who'd had a TBI due to external mechanical force and were at least 9 months post-injury. We didn't define that as mild, moderate, and severe. And that's very different from, I think, from a lot of other studies. We were looking at their functioning rather than their medical diagnosis for those levels. We included people who had been discharged from a TBI rehabilitation program, which could be inpatient or outpatient. So their injuries, the sequelae of their injuries were significant enough that they went through rehabilitation. They were over the age of 18 and they were able to travel independently in the community. We used that criteria because we were looking for a way to kind of distinguish, these are people who could pick up the phone, call a cab, and go to their doctor's appointment. That they were people who might be able to go out and do things, take a walk by themselves, and therefore be a little more involved in their advocacy. The exclusion criteria, these were all English-speaking people. We excluded people who had gone through SAIL before, and we also had people take the GSES at baseline and looked at their scores. If they were equal to or above 32, that indicated that they already had a high level of general self-efficacy and wouldn't have a lot of room to move up in that area. So we excluded those folks. The intervention was a 10-week SAIL intervention. There were 12 hours that people were in the group together. And then they had weekly homework assignments. And those assignments involved them going home and working with someone else to complete the assignment, getting their feedback and their input. That could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could even be a case manager or a therapist if they didn't have someone else. And then there were 2 booster phone calls after the group ended. But those were included in the period of time that was called treatment. The control group received treatment as usual. Whatever they were doing, they kept doing, and they received the workbooks at the end of the trial. These were people who were on average 52 years of age, a wide variety of ages. Their time since injury also varied, but on average was about 9 years. They were somewhat evenly divided between male and female, a little more female. We're not sure why that was, because I know that's not the norm. And most of them were not married at the time of the study, and the majority were people with severe brain injuries. And there were no significant group differences between the treatment group and the control group at baseline. What we found was we met our primary hypothesis. The treatment group showed significantly greater improvement than the control group from baseline to the end of treatment on the primary measure. We also found similar results on secondary measures on the GSES and on satisfaction with life. And the treatment group were able to develop and meet their individual goals during the period of time of treatment. We also gave the treatment group a satisfaction survey, asking them how satisfied they were with the treatment. And they rated it themselves as highly satisfied. And they also indicated that they enjoyed the group process the most. However, an important fact in our results was that those significant differences that we saw at the end of treatment began to slip over time on follow-up and didn't maintain. So why was that? Why were the results non-significant at follow-up? As a research group, we took a look at that, and what we came up with as a possible answer, or at least a partial answer, is that on the satisfaction survey, they were highly satisfied at the treatment group, and the group process was the most important thing to them. And they all indicated that they were disappointed the group was ending, and they wanted it to continue. So what they were enjoying ended at the end of treatment. And the support they were receiving ended at the end of treatment. The control group, on the other hand, their key interaction was with the evaluator who called them and interviewed them at each of the evaluation points. And that relationship continued through all points. So we wondered about the effect of social desirability, which has been shown to be a factor in a number of studies, that wanting to please the evaluator, wanting to give them the answers that they thought they wanted. And over time, as people took the assessments, they learned more and more about what was desired in terms of the outcomes. We also concluded that people living with the chronic effects of brain injury can improve their general self-efficacy, their self-efficacy related to self-advocacy, and their satisfaction with life many years post-injury. We also learned that continuation of gains may require lifelong support systems in the community. That when the treatment ends, those gains may begin to slip, and we may need more than a one and done treatment. And I think that's true for a lot of the treatment interventions that we offer to people living with brain injury. In terms of disseminating that information, I'm still using the SAIL group workbook and developed a leader workbook to go along with it. I'm also doing train the trainer training for a little bit for NASHA, working with some of the state brain injury groups. And I'm working a lot in Colorado with our state systems to integrate the concept of SAIL and self-advocacy into state services. It really can't be a one and done thing. It has to be something that we continue to live through life, is how can we have that attitude of self-advocacy? The idea that we're here to support people in living their life well and having self-determination. And can we integrate that into the support groups that people continue to go through over the years, so that they're constantly learning about being reminded and practicing the skills of self-advocacy. So what is our role in helping with this, in empowering people to live their best life, to determine their lives, and to advocate for themselves? I think a couple things. One is, I think that we need to recognize the expertise of people living with brain injury and the family members that advocate with and for them. And that they have the right to advocate for themselves. They have the right to have a say in their life. I think about that boat and how they may need someone else to provide some of the skill of advocacy, or to provide some of the information. We can provide that support. We can provide those skills. We can provide those resources. But we still need to give them the ability to say what their preferences are, what their needs are, where they want to go. I also think that we can help by providing a focus as people go through the process and of rehabilitation and then moving back to the community, that at some point treatment ends and living begins. And we can help by focusing on living well, focusing our efforts for those folks who are, 1, 5, 20, 30 years post-injury, that it's on social connection, finding purpose in life and self-determination. And I think one other thing we can do is transition at some point from a medical model to a social disability model. A medical model says that the person is a patient. They have a problem and it needs to be fixed. And we're here to fix it. We're the experts. And there certainly is a place for that. When someone's in the emergency room, when they're in acute care, the doctor is the expert, the therapists are the experts. They have a lot to offer to this person. They're providing a lot of the direction. But at some point, as a person begins to live their life in the community again, that social disability model more looks at society as maybe being the one that needs to change, that society poses barriers to people living with disabilities, and that maybe society needs to change some of its attitudes about people living with brain injury. It's awareness of that there is this group of people out there living life after brain injury and what their needs are, and that we need to look at what resources we're offering to people and how that really fits those long-term needs. So that instead of looking at them as a patient, we can look at them as a member of the community who's active in determining their own life. I know there's a lot of talk about brain injury as a chronic disease. And I know for some people, they have a lot of chronic medical problems, but I don't look at brain injury as a chronic disease. I think that keeps people in that medical model. I think I look at it as a life journey to navigate toward a more purposeful and fulfilling life. And our job is to provide support and resources. These are a couple of references about the studies that we did at Craig Hospital. And that's my email. So let me get out of this. And we can start talking.
Fantastic. Oh, I get more out of that every time I hear it. I get different things. It looks like we have quite a few people. Well, everybody's still on. So let's open it up for questions. Melanie wants to know if these slides are available. I think you'll get a copy of the whole recording after. Is that right, Jennifer?
Yes, that is correct. All registrants will receive the recording of this webinar.
Thank you so much.
Great. Anything else? And not just questions, but thoughts, you know, comments. Anything that comes to mind for you?
So John, in New Hampshire and Maine, is this along the lines of what you're doing up there?
Yes, it is along the lines, but I will certainly acknowledge it's not as in-depth or thorough as this is. One thing that we've found, we were rolling out a series of in-person and virtual self-advocacy trainings, and frankly, there has not been a terribly big response. We're just dealing with the brain injury community writ large, you know, not specifically from one hospital, but people that are known to the brain injury associations. So we haven't really succeeded in rolling this out to lots and lots of people.
You know, John, one thing we're doing in Colorado is MindSource is our state brain injury program, and they fund the Brain Injury Alliance of Colorado, which is, you know, our main advocacy group. And so within their state plan, they wrote SAIL into their state plan and developing self-advocacy. And then I've been working with the folks at BIAC, the Brain Injury Alliance, and to teach other people to run these groups. So they're now running those groups through the Brain Injury Alliance. And the groups are being run by a combination of people who are living with brain injury and then staff members at BIAC. And this year, what we hope to accomplish is to do trainings for the rest of the Brain Injury Alliance staff, so that they're kind of not running the groups themselves, but they're using those concepts as they work with people to navigate their lives. And then we're also going to be training the support group leaders. And so that's kind of that's the method they've used to kind of roll it out. I don't know. Are you part of your state brain injury group?
Oh yes, we're definitely part of it. In Colorado, then the SAIL groups and the support groups are two separate things.
Yes, they are. The
So
SAIL
people
groups are more short term. I kind of see it, and I'm working with them as far as how they see it, as the SAIL groups are, there's a beginning and an end. And it's a group of 8 people who are working together. They work their way through the workbook, and then they're done. And then our idea is then for the support groups to have like a SAIL coach, someone who keeps that concept going, keeps bringing up SAIL topics, has speakers come in, involves the SAIL concepts in the discussions of the SAIL group. So that's the connection.
Okay, if I may continue asking then, how long does it take the SAIL group to go through the workbook typically?
The workbook is designed for 6 sessions, but I've done it in 8 and 12 as well, depending on the size of the group and kind of how quickly people are processing the information.
And are they in person or virtual?
Both. Some are in
Colorado's a
person.
big state.
Yeah, it is. The groups that I usually do myself are I'd say 80% in person. But of course, during COVID, I was doing the groups at Craig. I was doing some virtually.
So brain injury survivors just sign up on their own. They say, I'd like to participate in this.
You could contact the Brain Injury Alliance of Colorado,
right?
that would be great. I
Mhm,
could let you know who to contact there.
Thanks. But I'm also asking the survivors in Colorado, do they just kind of raise their hand and say, I would like to participate in a sale group?
In Colorado, they have, I forget what they call them, but there's the staff at BIAC are kind of like navigators and working with people, support staff, and they'll suggest it to someone that they're working with. And they also offer it through their, they notify people through their website.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Other questions, thoughts?
Looks like someone has, and then looks like Catherine Nichols has her hand raised.
Catherine?
Does she have to be unmuted?
I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
Thank you, Lenny, for that line of work. It's
Thanks.
powerful. I don't know where to start really, but I'll try to focus on main things. I'm a mom, so I understand well how tricky it is to build self-advocacy in an adult son with a brain injury. I keep thinking about Love Your Brain. I've been thinking about Love Your Brain and their program lately because they're up for this national award to get some money, but they do a really good job with their little program, which is mindfulness and support group, 6 weeks, virtual, all over the world, really strong program fidelity, and really strong pre and post testing. So I just wondered if somebody's thought about how to, I don't know who would do it, but how to create your sale program with that kind of a structure around it. I don't know if you would want to talk to them about doing it, or if there's another place that, anyway, that's just a thought.
When you say that kind of structure, are you talking about the pre and post testing?
The whole thing, our son has participated in many of their sessions. But he definitely needs work in the advocacy sphere.
Yeah.
And I see the need. I'm involved in Oregon trying to enhance and better systematize our services and supports. So we're going to be working on that. I did take the brain injury community and its service providers to the legislature, and we did pass an important bill last session. And I can't tell you how empowering that was for everyone. And it was very definitely a boat collective sort of effort. I'm a sailor, so the boat metaphor works for me. Also, The Boys in the Boat is coming out soon as a movie over the holidays. And I will never forget the part of that book where they talk about when the people get into a sync and a rhythm, rowing these Olympic boats, how much steam and energy they can generate. So anyway, the last thing I just want to say, and I say this somewhat as a devil's advocate and a social scientist, I'm a sociologist. I think, have you seen in your sort of international discussions with people about this, any kind of pushback from people outside the United States? Because I think we have a particularly strong cultural value around self-determination that, isn't always consistent with the reality of social dynamics and interdependence. And yeah, I guess I'd just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I haven't, I've spoken to a number of people in different countries about this. And I haven't seen pushback, but of course the people interested in it are usually people who are a little more moving in that direction. And I also thought you brought up an important point about groups. I think that groups in general, I really believe in small groups and what they do for people. And I developed another intervention called GIST, which is a social skills group that we've also done some research on. And I think one of the key components is people getting that aha experience that they're not alone.
Yeah.
That they're helpful to each other. And like you said, it's very empowering to work together and accomplish something. And I think it's important that we realize that the person with the injury needs that just like the rest of us do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Looks like we might have time for one last question. Anybody have anything else? Well, I want to thank Lenny and thank Ibis for just a wonderful venue for people to be able to learn and gather and share information. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
And you'll be getting this in the mail. It looks in your email. Thank you, everyone. So glad you joined us today. Fabulous. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone.
See you.
Bye.